When we're buying a motor vehicle, the choice of car we make says something about us and our status in life. If we're doing well for ourselves financially, we might treat ourselves to a luxury car, so the rest of the world knows it. What does it say about us if we then leave those cars behind and let them turn to rust, though? All the cars in this video have three things in common. They're expensive, they're exclusive, and they've been abandoned. London is the capital city of England and home to many millionaires and billionaires. The top 1% of the people in London can probably afford to buy a $250,000 Lamborghini Huracan and treat it like a plaything. But a car like this deserves better than just being dumped and abandoned in a ditch. An amateur photographer called Andrew Lawrence was walking to work in the city when he came across the unbelievable sight and stopped to get photographic evidence. It looked to him like the car may have crashed. It was facing the wrong way on the road, and the driver's door was pressed up against the hard side of the ditch, meaning the driver must have crawled out of the passenger door. There was no sign of the owner anywhere nearby. Given the proximity of the abandoned car to the football stadium of Premier League club Tottenham Hotspur, he wondered if a mega-rich soccer star just left it here after they crashed and bought a new one the next morning. Abandoning a car in a warehouse isn't as bad as leaving it in a ditch, but it's still no way to treat a Chevrolet Corvette Z06. This find is the sort of thing that the TV show Storage Wars was made for. A couple living in Duluth, Georgia, USA, made a winning bid on an abandoned storage unit, rolled up the door to see what they'd won, and couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the car. Because it had no paperwork, they initially feared it was stolen. But when checks were done on the vehicle's ID, it came up clean. It was bought brand new for $75,000 in 2009, traveled only 720 miles, and then ended up in the warehouse until 2018. This version of the Corvette is tuned for high performance and is considered to be a racing model, with 505 horsepower coming from a 7-liter V8 engine. We think we'd have been inclined to keep it, but the lucky couple decided to sell it at auction, where it fetched $57,000. A pair of mushroom pickers out in the forests near St. Petersburg got more than they bargained for when they stumbled across this Honda MSX standing among the trees. It was immediately obvious that the car had been there for a long time. Moss was beginning to grow in and around it. The condition of the vehicle wasn't bad, but it had one significant issue. The engine was missing. Who drives a supercar into the forest, takes the engine out, and walks away? The Honda NSX was a pioneering vehicle. When it was first launched in 1990, it was the world's first car to have its bodywork, chassis, and suspension all made from aluminum. The popular model stayed on the production line all the way through until 2005. Checks on the vehicle revealed that it was built in Germany and then shipped to Russia, but no current owner could be located. Because of that, the custom design specialist's custom crew have taken possession of it. They're going to put the engine back in and get this beautiful car back out onto the road. Owning just one Ferrari is the ultimate dream of many car enthusiasts. So some of you might be angry to find out that a whole fleet of 13 of them have been left rotting in a field in Texas for more than 6 years. There's a twist in the tale, though. It wasn't the owner's fault. All of these cars used to belong to a Texan attorney who was good at his job, made a lot of money, and loved flashy cars. As well as his 13 Ferraris, he also had Porsches, Lamborghinis, and a Rolls-Royce. One day in 2011, though, he got sick. He couldn't drive them anymore, so he paid them to be put into storage. When the sickness got worse and stopped him from working, he couldn't afford to pay for the storage. The thoughtless owner of the storage unit rolled all the cars into a field, not even thinking to put protective covering on them. That's how this eclectic arrangement of Ferraris, ranging from the Testarossa to the 348 and the Mondial, came to be in this sorry condition. When it was brand new, the Bugatti Veyron was arguably the most desirable status symbol vehicle in the world. The powerful and beautiful cars are rare and exclusive, and belong the road or at car shows, not at the bottom of a lake. Here's a lesson for everybody: crime doesn't pay. American car dealer Andy House paid $1 million for his Veyron in October 2006, but insured it for $2.2 million. A month after completing the purchase, he deliberately drove the car into a lagoon, leaving the engine running to ensure it would be destroyed. He planned to falsely claim he'd been involved in an accident and claim the full value of the insurance money. His absurd story was that he'd had to swerve to avoid a low-flying pelican. Unfortunately for House, a car enthusiast had seen the Veyron and had stopped to take footage of it on their mobile phone. They caught the whole incident on camera. House went to jail for insurance fraud, and the Veyron went back to the garage for repair. Lamborghinis are always special, but the Lamborghini Countach 25th Anniversary Edition is especially so. This was the car that Lamborghini built to celebrate 25 years of creating luxury vehicles back in 1988. It contains kisses to the company's past and nods to its illustrious future. That's why it breaks our hearts to see one left forgotten and covered in dust in a parking lot in Tokyo. If you know a thing or two about these cars, it gets even worse. The rear wing has been removed, and the polished wheels the car would have come with have been replaced by generic Japanese Roto wheels. Worse still, there are only 3 wheels attached to the car. The back right of the car is held up on a pile of bricks. A scattering of personal possessions in the messy interior of the Lamborghini suggests that someone still owns this. Or at least they did until recently. But from the dust and debris, it's evident that the vehicle hasn't moved for some time. We don't know what this Mercedes McLaren SLR did to offend somebody, but the poor supercar was left behind for years, not once, but twice. It was purchased brand new in 2008 and shipped from the USA to Khabarovsk in Russia. Once there, the car barely moved at all for 5 years, before eventually being driven to Novosibirsk and left behind once again. This time it stood in an underground parking lot for another 3 years. The owner put a basic cover on it, but it didn't stop a thick layer of dust from building up underneath. When the car was eventually sold again and liberated from its prison, the new owners were pleasantly surprised that it could be driven out of the parking lot. The batteries had to be replaced, but all of the fluids were still good. After being taken to a nearby car wash, the SLR almost looked as good as new. A mechanic gave it a thorough check before giving it the green light to travel on down the road to its new home in Moscow, where hopefully somebody will finally pay it the attention it deserves. There are dozens of websites which feature stories about cars found in barns, and most of the time they're just standard road vehicles which someone forgot about or no longer needs. Every once in a while, though, you come across a real gem. This 1939 Lincoln Zephyr Coupe qualifies under that description. It looks a little angular and strange by modern standards, but when it first hit the market, it was considered to be streamlined and infinitely preferable to the Chrysler models which came out years earlier. Decades spent in a barn in Virginia have taken their toll on the bodywork. But despite the flaking paintwork and hints of rust, this veteran roadster isn't past the point where it couldn't be restored. It still contains its original tiny V12 engine, and the owner reports that the engine astonishingly still turns over, although it isn't in running condition. Like most of the old cars that are found in barns, the Zephyr was headed to auction, in the hope that a buyer with an interest in restoration and repair work could be found. As it's allegedly one of only 33 left in the world, we imagine it attracted a high price. Cars like the Bentley BT don't often appear on the streets of Nigeria. They're more the sort of vehicle you'd be likely to see driving around on the streets of Dubai or Abu Dhabi. They're so rare that many Nigerians tend to remember the ones they have seen. And they say that this distinctive yellow model was the first Bentley GT ever owned or driven within the country. That makes it all the more shocking that it's seemingly been parked up on a standard street corner, and then left to gather filth and grime. A small car shop in Lagos noticed the vehicle and uploaded pictures to Twitter, where they started to gather attention. Some Lagos natives remember seeing it driven aggressively around the streets of Lagos around a decade ago, and say that it belonged to Leah Abiara, the daughter of Pastor Samuel Abiara, who is the head of the Christ Apostolic Church. Leah now lives in the USA, so it might be that she just couldn't or wouldn't pay for the car to move abroad with her. Couldn't she just have sold it instead of letting it rot? How you feel about Tesla might depend a little on how you feel about its founder Elon Musk and electric cars in general. When they released their Tesla Model 3 all-electric car in 2017, it attracted rave reviews from excited journalists. But it wasn't long before users started reporting issues with the software and hardware of the vehicles. That dampened down the excitement. And although it's officially the biggest-selling electric car of all time, it would seem they haven't sold quite as many as they anticipated. A team of drone operators who call themselves the Shorty Air Force captured footage of a huge parking lot, which shows thousands of the cars parked up and going nowhere. Tesla responded to the footage by saying that the cars had all been bought, and they were waiting on a suitable car carrier service to come and take them for delivery. But the Association of Road Carriers reported that they were unaware of any issues with transporting Tesla cars. It looks like they might have just built far more than they can sell. What's going to happen to all of these unwanted cars? Imagine the embarrassment of paying big money to acquire a Ferrari 456 and then getting it clamped because you failed to pay the tax on the vehicle. In the end, the clamping might be the end of a long and sad story for the Ferrari, which had been parked on the streets of a very rich area in Knightsbridge, London for at least 3 years. The car's inspection tag expired in early 2015, but as the tax was still valid, authorities could do nothing about clamping it and moving it until that also ran out. The day finally arrived in the middle of 2017. This model of Ferrari was launched in the 1990s, and for a while, it was the fastest four-seater vehicle in the world. Even all these years later, it would still attract a price of $90,000 if it were in slightly better condition. One of the Ferrari badges has been stolen from the dirty bodywork, and the wing mirrors have also been damaged. As nobody came forward to tax or claim it, the car was eventually taken for sale at auction, where a buyer hopefully got it back to its best. The British supercar company Spectre may have turned out to be a failed experiment in the long run, but that doesn't mean that the cars they created should be left abandoned to rot under the sun. This is a Spectre R42, a sports car with 2 seats that was built for a limited run in 1996 and 1997. Only 23 of them were ever built before Spectre went bankrupt, having vastly overestimated the demand for their cars. The Spectre R42 looks beautiful, but critics were keen to point out that much of the design appears to have been copied from, or at least heavily inspired by, the Ford GT40. It came with a 4.6-liter V8 engine capable of 360 horsepower, and it topped out at 173 miles per hour, but Spectre just couldn't persuade the buying public to take an interest in it. Someone in Turkey must have been briefly enthusiastic about the car because this picture was taken in Istanbul. But the Spectre doesn't seem to have moved for a long time. It has no license plate, and it's cramped into the corner of a rooftop car park, baking under the sun. Even the fate that befell its creator was kinder than this. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.